His ways are not our own. So when your pathway grows dim and you just can't see him, remember he's still on the throne.
Welcome to Bringing Jesus to a Broken Heart. Today's guest is Rebecca Kiessling, and she is an American anti-abortion activist and attorney. Her advocacy is focused towards criminalizing abortion, especially in the case of pregnancy from rape. Welcome, Rebecca. This is going to be a 5-part series on the decision. That's powerful because those who have chosen life have made very powerful decisions. So for all those that are listening, Rebecca has a wonderful testimony to share with us. She was conceived out of rape. We're going to talk a little bit about that, about the wonderful gift of life, and especially Rebecca's life. Rebecca, you were adopted at birth, and at what age were you when your adopted parents told you that you were adopted?
Well, my parents got me when I was 6 weeks old, and they told me from a very young age, and I didn't really understand the concept. They just told me I was chosen, and I sort of thought when I was young that I was adopted instead of being born. Like, pregnant women were very special women to me because I thought that was really different. They didn't introduce the concept of a birth mother until years later. Pretty much that you were as old as you were adopted, and my brother was adopted before me.
How did you eventually find your birth mother and the history behind your birth?
Well, first I petitioned for what's called my non-identifying information. And it had all kinds of details about her height, weight, age, the age of my half-brother, half-sister. She was actually a year older than my parents. She was 31 when I was born. And her ethnicity, religious background, my brother was 11, my sister 13 when I was born. It had the age of my grandparents, medical history, educational history, all kinds of details. But then all it said for my biological father was that he was Caucasian and of large build. And of course I thought that sounds like a police description. I asked my parents what they thought. It must be something, who knows, whatever, don't worry about it. They didn't know how to handle it. And my police worker.
And they knew though, they knew that the history, right?
They did not know that. They knew that she was going through a divorce at the time and that I had an older half-brother and half-sister. That's all that they knew. I called my caseworker and asked her, was my mom raped? And she said, yeah, I didn't want to tell you. And so actually my childhood was really chaotic.
I have a question that I think that would be really important for the listeners to hear. When you were told the history, what impact did it have on you at the time, and what was revealed to you?
Well, I really felt worthless, like garbage, because of what people said, that I was like garbage, that I was disposable because of how I was conceived. So I just wanted to talk to someone who valued my life, and I remember through my tears on the other end of the phone, this woman spoke words of value into my life.
At a very young age, you came to Christ, so this was in the Catholic Church, correct?
That was not, but I was called back to Christ through the Catholic Church when I was in law school. And then I went to RCIA, First Communion, everything, baptized First Communion, all in the Catholic Church.
Well, you know what? There's a timeline here that Jesus had his hand on you, God has had his hand on you all along, and you were getting introduced to Christ. And I would love to hear how you did fall into the faith of Catholicism and what led you there. But I have a couple of questions before we get to that, because that's one of my questions coming up. Was there any feelings of rage or anger, or what can you describe once you did find out what was going on inside of you? What were some of your emotions, if you'd like to share?
Well, I was really hurting, but I was always a person who was very driven. I excelled in academics and athletics, and I was also a people pleaser. I tried to keep the peace in my tumultuous household.
You already had met your birth mother, correct? Even before you met Christ?
I met her when I was 19, and she wanted to meet me. I ended up being one of the first people in Michigan to have a judge allow my caseworker to try to contact my birth mother and see if she wanted to meet me. It's called a confidential intermediary now. The law actually provides for it. The law was changed 7 years later. It was changed to actually provide for this mechanism. And if you were adopted after 1980, which I was born in 1969, adopted in 1969. But if you were adopted after 1980, you turn 18, you get your information. Unless there's something specifically on file that she doesn't want to release. meet me, and we had to still fill out all the paperwork, and I got a letter with my birth name, which was Judy Ann Miracle, so I was a miracle baby.
And at that time, you already knew that you were conceived out of rape, so you already knew all the information when you contacted her.
They thought that would make her case more compelling, but women didn't typically lie about being raped. And she told me the horrible details when we met on the phone. She just kind of just let it all out. She said she was sorry to hear that I already knew, but then she told me everything, like graphic details. I mean, it was horrible. She was abducted at knife point by a serial rapist. She told me the whole aftermath, everything she did, went home, burned her clothes, showered, all this stuff. And I really felt so much compassion for her. Then she ultimately sent me this beautiful letter saying, hoping by now that the shock of finding out all the details of your birth I've forgotten.
Did she talk about, this might be a sensitive question, so of course, did she ever talk about why she did not raise you? Did she talk about that, why she couldn't?
She was going through a divorce, and my half-brother and half-sister went to stay with family members. She lived with her brother for a while and his family. My sister went off and lived with my aunt's family.
She had her own emotional turmoil going on at the time. I mean, do you have a relationship with her now, Rebecca?
We have a very close mother-daughter relationship.
Her testimony is going to be touching so many people listening that if they don't feel that they're valued, or they feel that they're broken, or their family has abandoned them, God never does. And he turns everything together for good. Priest that I felt like had been my mentor my whole life. He was a psychologist and also a priest with a world-renowned healing gift, Father Ralph Diorio. And he always says your life becomes your ministry. There's not a single pain that would ever be wasted. God uses it all for good.
What ultimately really helped was counseling that was scripture-based, really healing, having that new foundation. And that's why I decided I wanted to adopt.
You were given life and then you gave life back. So God has done some really mighty things with your life, and he's using you so profoundly. I did see that you were in the gift of life.
God used me to change the heart of Governor Rick Perry and Newt Gingrich during their presidential campaign.
Let's also value and let's try to go out and go forward and be a voice for those lives that are in jeopardy of not having this opportunity. So I want to really thank you so much for taking the time, sharing this. And, I'm going to close with this. Thanks again, Rebecca, and keep holding high the cross and doing your work, because you are a blessing, and we are so pleased to have had you on our show today.